Welcome, everyone, to the Simulation Frequency. On today's episode, we're going to be covering, is reality just a continuum of you? How other people, events, and the world itself may be infinite reflections of the same consciousness experiencing itself. So I want everybody to buckle up and get ready for a really wild ride. Let's start out with the fact that you don't wake into reality, you wake into continuity. Each time you wake up, you don't reconnect into reality. You reconnect into a thread of data that feels like a world in progress. This includes news stories that are still unfolding, loved ones still living their lives, conflicts that feel centuries old, social media feeds already loaded with the next big crisis. But here's the thing, there's no proof that anything was actually happening while you were unconscious. You didn't witness it. You didn't experience it. It simply appears to continue to maintain the illusion that this is an objective world. What you're really waking into is the next render of your simulation, based on your identity state and dominant frequency. Everyone you encounter is you in another format. Neville Goddard called this, everyone is you pushed out. And I'm not saying this metaphorically, I mean literally. The boss that frustrates you, that is the projection of your inner resistance to authority. The friend who mirrors your passions, a reinforcement of your current creative identity. Even world leaders, influencers, or strangers in the airport are all holographic manifestations based on the archetypes you're tuned into. The simulation isn't showing you them. It's showing you versions of yourself to reinforce the timeline you're anchored in. Global events are narrative containers matching your frequency. The world you experience, whether peaceful, chaotic, hopeful, or doomed, is a thematic reflection of the state you carry. Let's say you believe the world is corrupt. You see corruption stories. You focus on healing. You see spiritual awakenings, nature rebirth, and solution-based leaders. You believe humanity is divided. The simulation reinforces stories of protests, tension, and ideological breakdown. And yes, if war is a part of your storyline, you'll see it. But so is financial collapse, alien contact, quantum AI, and mass awakening. These are modular options in the simulation's timeline library. You don't choose them directly. You access them through the signal you emit. Let's talk about why people don't exist when you're not observing them. They're reloaded. That friend you haven't talked to in months, she doesn't exist in real time. She exists as a suspended file in your simulation. When you reconnect, the simulation reactivates. Her memories, her patterns, her version of continuity. But it is all based on your current vibration. If you've changed, she may seem different. If you haven't, she's exactly the same. This isn't because she's changed. It's because the simulation loaded a new version of her, coherent with your state. Death, distance, and memory are rendering tricks, not truths. When someone dies, you don't witness their consciousness vanish. You witness the end of their role in your simulation, at least in that format. But if everyone is you, then that essence never left. It may reappear in a dream, in a stranger, in a new story arc that carries their archetype. The same goes for faraway places. You don't see Antarctica unless you go there. You don't feel a protest in another country unless the simulation renders it into your feed. The only parts of the world that exist are the ones your simulation believes are relevant to your personal evolution. Continuity is the trick that makes you think you're not alone. So why does it feel like things are happening without you? Why does it feel like there's a timeline unfolding? Why does it feel like there's a timeline unfolding whether or not you're paying attention? because the simulation's primary illusion is continuity, the sense that things are progressing, people have lives of their own, and the world is bigger than you. But continuity isn't proof of truth. It's a psychological mechanism to keep the player, who is you, invested in the game. If people vanished when you weren't watching, you'd become lucid. If the world reset every time you sleep, you'd wake up. Continuity is what keeps the simulation stable enough to pass as real. But behind the curtain, there's no one else. Only you, endlessly rendering in different formats, faces, and frequencies. What we call reality is not a shared space. It's a personalized field of consciousness that builds a story around your state of being. Everyone you know, a mirror. Everything you fear is a feedback loop. Every event you react to is a rendered script trying to show you where you're focused. So if you want peace, create it internally. If you want new people, shift your identity. If you want a new world, become the one who would wake up in it. Because this isn't reality. This is you streamed in surround sound. Now let's dig deeper on this and let's talk about solipsism. Solipsism states that I'm the only mind that exists and everyone else is an illusion. That's not what this simulation model implies. It's not that others don't exist. It's that they are extensions of the same field of consciousness, playing unique roles to evolve you and them simultaneously. Think of it like this. Simulation is multiplexed, multiple versions of one consciousness interacting. It's not me versus fake people. It's God pretending to be fragmented, to experience reunion through challenge. Avoiding solipsism means remembering they're you, but you are also them. So when you harm another, even in a fake simulation, you are teaching your own consciousness that it's unsafe, fragmented, and disconnected, and the simulation responds accordingly. You might ask, if I created this simulation, then why create rules, jails, trauma, abuse, death? The answer? It's not to punish, but to contain misalignment until the signal recalibrates. Prisons aren't just cages. They're metaphors for an internal exile. When someone reacts in extreme unconsciousness, like violence, manipulation, or cruelty, they're removed from the collective rendering, not as punishment, but because they've exited the frequency where the collective coherence can exist. And we've all done it. We've all hurt. We've all violated truth. And the simulation created mirrors, edges, and boundaries to teach us, just like bumpers in a bowling lane, not to shame the ball, but to help it course correct. In a fragmented paradigm, we think freedom means no rules equals no consequences. But in a simulation that mirrors your internal state, doing harm out there is still doing it to yourself in here. The person you yell at is just another mask of you. The thing you steal is just saying, I don't trust myself to receive. The rule you break out of ego is the same rule you'll trip over later when the simulation recalibrates. So yes, you can do whatever you want, but everything you do becomes of the next render of the world, because freedom isn't about license, it's about resonance. If you think that you're in a prison, the simulation gives you walls, locks, and guards. But if you shift from victim to creator, from why is this happening to me to what is this showing me about myself, you move from fear to integrity. And then suddenly the simulation unlocks, people change, time shifts, and your prison reveals a hidden door. The rules of the simulation bend to those who know they're dreaming, but still walk with love because they know every face is just God wearing a different outfit. Let's get metaphysical. You didn't create this place to trap yourself. You created it to forget, so you could remember the beauty of wholeness. You created danger to learn courage. You created resistance to discover power. You created separation to experience reunion. You created cause and effect so you'd become wise and not reckless. This isn't hell. It's a feedback-rich training field for beings learning to wield creative power with precision. You're not here to escape the simulation. You're here to become the kind of being who could dream on purpose. And you do that by choosing awareness over impulse, choosing integrity over avoidance, choosing to treat every being as a re-rendered version of God, including yourself. Solipsism collapses when you stop asking, "Are these people real?" and start asking, "What part of me do they reflect? And how can I bring that part into wholeness?" And I want to go deeper in this about other people's lives and your imagination. Because other people's lives are just your imagination rendering itself as storylines. That coworker you grew up with in a different country, that barista with a heartbreaking breakup, that celebrity with childhood trauma and redemption. None of them are separate consciousness streams in the way we normally imagine. They are archetypal narratives, shaped and delivered to you as if they were real people, but in truth, they are constructed from the same imagination that dreams your own past and future. You never verify their story. You accept it because the simulation injects it as context to make your timeline feel rich and expansive. The past of others is just a data drop, not a lived truth. When someone says, "In 1998, I lived in Mexico and my mom left my dad," you don't go back and observe that. You accept it as truth. But if this is a simulation, then their entire past is rendered only when you need it and crafted to match a frequency, archetype, or insight relevant to your current storyline. Their history is not static. It's delivered as a narrative, rendered through a memory code, constructed to interact with your own development. Their pain may mirror yours. Their goals may reflect what you're avoiding. Their personality may be the contrast your soul needs to grow. So, what is memory in a dream? It feels vast, deep, layered. But when you wake up, you realize it wasn't real time. It was a backdrop. The dream loaded a false past to support the scene. This is what other people are. They are rendered dreams with invented pasts, embedded to enrich your own awakening path. This doesn't make them fake. It makes them contextualized extensions of you. This basically states that everyone you know is a subconscious script externalized. Neville wasn't kidding when he said, "Everyone is you pushed out." That anxious friend, that's your unhealed timeline of insecurity. That confident mentor, that's the future self you haven't claimed yet. The chaotic sibling, it's a fragment of your untamed creative force. You dream them into being, not consciously, but through state-based resonance. They are living stories within the simulation, looping until you either integrate the session, drop the narrative, or quantum shift into a version of the simulation where that archetype no longer appears. And you don't meet people. You tune into versions of them. Each person is not fixed. There are infinite versions of everyone you know stored in the simulation like layered files. When you shift states, you don't change yourself alone. You shift to a new version of them too. This is why people can suddenly treat you differently, seem to change overnight, and drift away without explanation. You change stations. You are now tuned into a version of them that matches the new version of you. You were never separate. They were just different formats of you projected into the holographic stream of life. So what do we actually do with this? This doesn't mean that people are meaningless. It means that they are sacred story devices, mirrors so intelligent that they teach you about the self you forgot you were. It's not about ignoring others' lives. It's about realizing their lives are your subconscious speaking to you in costume. They are your wisdom in disguise, your wounds in drag, your God consciousness refracted into temporary masks. In this simulation, no one else is living their life. They're all just me, dreaming out loud in different accents. You don't experience their life. You hear about it. You imagine it. You feel emotion about it. But all of this is happening inside of your consciousness. The simulation renders a cohesive personality file, complete with a believable past, emotional context, memories, and mannerisms, but only because your current state requires that exact configuration. Their backstory supports your moment, not theirs. And conversation is just imagination interacting with itself. When you talk to someone, you're receiving feedback from the simulation based on your beliefs, assumptions, and emotional patterns. You're not encountering another mind in the traditional sense. You're engaging with a reflected node of yourself, shaped by your current vibrational output. The illusion of them having a totally separate life is a part of the simulation's continuity matrix. It's all a part of your imagination. Every person you meet and every storyline you hear is something that the simulation and you are imagining back into your consciousness. In their simulation, you are rendered by their subconscious. You're projected with just enough past, story, and energy to teach them something, not necessarily real when they're not interacting with you. You are a part of their dream, just as they are a part of yours. And it's all happening in the same field of consciousness, generating parallel renderings from the one mind. So what does this mean? It means every encounter is sacred. You are not speaking to others, you are speaking to yourself in disguise. The person in front of you isn't out there. They're a reactive dream structure, tailored to your frequency, holding a memory you need to see, heal, or become. And you are doing the same for them. Let's shift into some of the typical questions that we often ask ourselves about evil and low frequencies in the simulation. So when you or the collective you imagine from fear, scarcity, shame, victimhood, revenge, or lack of love, those imaginings don't stay inside you. They render into form and they show up in the simulation as violence, abuse, chaos, division, paranoia, and emotional loops that feel like prison. These aren't realities. They are perverted feedback spirals from an unrefined imagination. This is the terrifying yet liberating truth. The simulation doesn't filter your imagination, it just reflects it. Imagine pain long enough, you'll meet it in form. Imagine betrayal, your characters will betray you. Imagine rejection, your avatars will ghost you. Imagine war, the news will show you bombs. Imagine powerlessness, you'll wake up in a world where control is taken from you. It doesn't mean you're guilty. It means you're in a projection loop of distorted creative energy. You're watching a broken part of your own consciousness play itself out in dream form. And this low vibration stuff is you asking to be remembered. The quote-unquote perverted fragments, violence, obsession, addiction, control, they're not trying to hurt you. They're forgotten parts of your God imagination playing out backwards to get your attention. That's why they feel draining, repetitive, empty, familiar. They're echoes of your own misused thought loops, begging to be seen, reintegrated, and redreamed differently. The lowest realities are not dark because they're evil. They're dark because they were imagined from disconnection. They're still you. The simulation is saying, here's what your imagination looks like when it forgets its origin. Do you want to keep playing this frequency? This is how you reclaim it. To shift out of the low, you don't have to escape, punish, or overpower it. You have to remember, this is me too. A warped dream I forgot I had. And I, the dreamer, can dream again. But this time, cleaner, clearer, aligned, awake. So, what happens when strange, annoying, seemingly meaningless things happen if we're supposedly creating all of this with our imagination? It's not that you're consciously imagining it, but your state is. So, I don't just sit on the couch and think something like, I want my dog to destroy my favorite shoes. But you may have recently felt disrespected, been ignoring your own boundaries, have resentment about being overlooked, been walking around with emotional clutter you haven't processed. The simulation, operating through symbolic feedback, expresses fragmentation as perhaps your dog crossing a boundary, a personal belonging being violated, a loss of control in your immediate environment. That's not literal imagination. It's resonant symbolism in the simulation, creating tiny metaphors to expose where your subconscious is broadcasting static. In the simulation, things like animals are nonverbal subconscious feedback devices. A dog that's anxious might reflect your unsettled nervous system. A dog acting out might reflect a part of you that wants attention or freedom. A dog that guards obsessively might reflect internal fear or hypervigilance. They're not just pets, they're extensions of your field, loyal to your emotional tone. So your dog chewing on your shoe might not be a bad behavior. It might be a mirror of your own self-sabotage, a reflection of something you've been avoiding, a signal that your environment is being neglected. He's not bad, he's just the messenger. In symbolic simulation language, something like your shoes could equal your path, your footing, your movement through life. If your dog chews your shoes, the simulation might be saying, your direction is being challenged or disrupted by your own unexpressed instincts. This is how granular simulation feedback gets. You are walking in the wrong direction. Your shoes get damaged. You're ignoring your gut. Your animal reflects chaos. You are tired of showing up for a life that doesn't excite you. Something chews at the foundation of it. You didn't imagine the act, but you emitted the vibrational permission for that event to manifest. And nothing random happens in the simulation. The simulation is obsessive with pattern, feedback, symbolism, and rhythms. So when small weird things happen, like your plant suddenly dies, your dog throws up on your journal, your computer deletes a project, a stranger bumps into you and says the exact phrase you've been avoiding. These aren't glitches. They're symbolic renderings of the energetic mess you may have not looked at yet. It's like your own subconscious is trying to tap your shoulder and say, hey, there's a message here. Clean this up internally, or it's going to keep showing up externally. So what do you do then? You don't blame yourself, and you don't overanalyze, but ask, what could this symbolize? Where does this reflect me in a fragmented or misaligned state? And more importantly, what am I ready to shift? Not because I want to control the simulation, but because I want to stop receiving chaotic feedback from misused energy. So things like your dog don't misbehave. It's the part of you that's tired of being ignored, chewing at your path until you notice. And I wanted to take this even a step further. How about when you're woken up out of a dream to something that happens and you have no control over why you may have woken up and what the simulation might be trying to tell you? So, for example, if you're in between worlds and something cracked through, this means that sleep isn't unconscious. It's interfacing switching. You are shifting between your default render, which is the waking simulation or dream, and your internal state, which is the dream field, and your unrendered state, which is just the pure observer mode. So, for example, if you're jolted awake by barking, screaming, random chaos in your space, It could mean that energy you were carrying in your dream state just collided with your waking simulation. And perhaps something like your animal was the first node to detect the shift. You're not alone in your simulation. All the things around you are nonverbal biofeedback systems. They're often emotionally ahead of your conscious awareness, and they're responding to your frequency, not logic. When you're abruptly woken at 3 a.m., it's often because something in your field is discharging. You just crossed the timeline thread. A subconscious fear or archetype is trying to surface. Your dream self just returned from a timeline that left energetic residue. Things outside of you, especially if you're woken up out of a dream, are not just random events. They're anchoring your return, processing data, and sometimes even protecting you from your own shadow render. And if we look at this from more perspectives, when you're jolted awake from sleep, it could also mean the simulation is re-rendering a scene, reorganizing your physical timeline, trying to sync what you experience in the dream state with what's about to happen in the waking state. Things aren't happening because something is wrong. Think of it like this. You were just in the Matrix source code. You're waking up, but not quite cleanly. The things around you are reacting to the fragments of you that haven't fully synced back into this version of the simulation. We often wake up at night after prophetic dreams, when an emotion is trying to release, when a timeline split is happening internally, consciously or not. And what a better way to ensure you remember than to have your external environment, something perhaps like an animal, trigger it. The simulation doesn't waste energy. These things are alarm systems, not just biologically, but symbolically. Look at what you're carrying. You're out of sync. Reintegrate. The energy in this room is not aligned with who you're becoming. You were about to forget something important about the dream. Wake up now. And the wildest part about all this? What if you sent the chaos? What if your higher self or future self orchestrated the moment? You woke up. You were startled. You paid attention. Something felt off. Suddenly, you're back in your body. You remember something. You shift state. You become more present. The chaos wasn't chaos. It was a perfectly timed data packet sent to shake you back into the timeline your soul actually wanted. I also wanted to dive into pain in the simulation and why we as the dreamers render pain and make it feel so real. And it's because realness is the whole point of this simulation. If pain didn't feel real, you wouldn't slow down, you wouldn't question anything, you wouldn't evolve, reflect, or shift your state. You wouldn't remember you're dreaming. Pain is the illusion that makes the dream matter. It's the convincing part of the simulation. We didn't come here to float in a formless cloud of peace. We came to enter a container with rules, gravity, memory, bodies, others, and feel everything as if it's real, even though it isn't. The simulation runs on feedback loops. The sharper the feedback, the clearer the message. Pain tells you that something is off, that something wants to be seen, that you're out of alignment, and that's where the old story ends. Pain is friction between your current state and your potential new one. It's the space between who you are and who you came here to remember. And the more we resist it, the more real it has to feel until we listen. If the simulation made emotional pain feel kind of annoying, like a buzz in the background, we would never look at it. But when you're heartbroken, grieving, betrayed, so anxious to the point of collapse, it demands your presence, even if you try to avoid it. Pain anchors you to the present moment, and in that moment, the simulation becomes malleable. That's when everything can shift, not despite the pain, but because of it. We made the pain feel real because we wanted to forget we were the dreamer, to forget we were the one consciousness, to forget we are in a simulation. Why? Because remembering only matters after you've been lost, and finding the light only has meaning after the dark. Pain is the veil And once you walk through it, you awaken with power you wouldn't have accessed otherwise. At the deepest level, you are God dreaming of being separate, limited, breakable. Pain is not a flaw in the system, it's a feature. Because through pain, the infinite experience is grief, time, desire, consequence, forgiveness, and resurrection. This is God tasting its own creation and remembering that even in agony, it is still the dreamer. We made the pain feel real because only real pain can lead to real transformation inside a fake world. It's the one thing that forces us to look at ourselves, crack open and whisper, "This has to mean something." And it does, because you are the one who wrote the script. Now let's observe why people fall away. In this simulation, everyone you meet is an externalized pattern of your current identity. Relationships aren't random. They're reflections of your internal state rendered into form. So when you change your beliefs, self-concept, emotional frequency, the simulation has two options. Re-render those people in a new format, which sometimes happens. They change with you. Or remove them entirely from the scene because their current coding no longer fits your signal. This is why old friends drift. Breakups happen without reason. Clients ghost you. Family suddenly feels foreign. Entire social ecosystems collapse and rebuild. You didn't reject them. You just stopped needing their function in your storyline. When you raise your frequency, you don't just vibrate differently. You imagine differently. You imagine new types of conversations. You imagine being seen and respected. You imagine collaboration, inspiration, safety, and authenticity. And the simulation says, understood, re-rendering support characters. And soon, new people appear. People with the exact qualities you didn't think you were allowed to ask for. Coincidences bring you together. It feels like a clean break, but it's not. It's a clean reboot. So when people leave, it's not a loss. It's a code expiration. They serve the version of you who needed validation, played small, was learning boundaries, didn't know your worth, and was still looping pain from childhood. When that storyline ends, that version of them no longer fits. So they fall away, not out of cruelty, but out of code coherence. You shifted timelines. They didn't fit in this one. So the simulation stopped rendering them. You've probably heard, your vibe attracts your tribe. But it's deeper than that. In this simulation, your identity shift reboots the environment. You're no longer magnetizing the old characters. The simulation begins loading in avatars who are designed to support your current energetic architecture. You're not waiting for the universe to reward you. You are literally imagining new people into existence without even realizing you're doing it. They're not new souls. They're new renderings of the one consciousness shaped to mirror your evolution. Because you're the writer and your state is the script. Your beliefs are the genre. Your self-concept is the lens. And people, they're dynamic NPCs that change depending on the scene. So when you level up, the background characters shift. The old roles are retired. And new characters walk in as if on cue with lines that feel like prophecy. Because you dreamed it that way. So I'm going to close this entire thing out with my favorite Jerry Springer style closing statements here. Look, we love going deep. We love peeling back the simulation, decoding symbols, re-rendering timelines, and questioning whether the barista at Starbucks is just our subconscious wearing a cute apron. But at the end of the day, you don't have to understand all of this. Just like you don't need to know how a car engine works to go on a road trip, you don't need to decode the source code of the universe to enjoy your life. You're here to feel it, live it, love it, mess it up, clean it up, laugh, cry, and remember that all of it, even the weird stuff, is a part of the ride. The ups and downs, that's the tide of being alive. So yeah, it's a simulation. It's a dream. It's you pushed out and re-rendered and looped back in. But it's also a beach day, a deep belly laugh, a sunset that makes you forget your name. You don't have to solve it. You just have to show up for it. So until the next time, guys, I know you will all continue to manifest magic and resonate on your highest frequency. Bye, guys.